Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to discuss the motion to disqualify Rob Wood as prosecutor. This motion was heard via Zoom in front of Judge Stephen Boyle. And yesterday was a difficult day. It was a 7-hour hearing on top of an attempted coup on our nation's capital here in the US. So yesterday was a trying day, so please give me some leeway in my appearance and in this video because it's been difficult. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the judge heard the motion to disqualify Rob Wood as prosecutor brought by Mark Means for Lori Vallow and by John Pryor for Chad Daybell. They were present via Zoom, as was Rob Wood, represented or with Troy Evans. Now think, they're trying to disqualify Rob Wood as prosecutor, so it'd probably be best for him not to speak for himself. You know what I mean? So he had Troy Evans representing him for this, and he was there. So you have Rob Wood, Troy Evans, you have a court reporter in the middle. It's very Brady Bunch via Zoom. You have Judge Stephen Boyle, you have Mark Means with his antler-headed chimera thing. I don't know what the hell is that, guys. By the way, what the hell is that he's got mounted behind his head? You got Mark Means representing Lori Vallow. You have John Pryor representing Chad Daybell. And then you'd have a witness come in as the sixth box. It was a whole lot, guys. It was a whole lot of crazy in a small little setting. So let me try to summarize the 7 hours down into what's important to know, all right? Because this is just a hearing. It's a motions hearing before the trial, okay? And it's about someone who may or may not even be called as a witness. So you following me? But it's still, they need to hash it out before trial, and they're going to do it. And I want you to keep in mind as you're hearing this or if you've watched it, you've got Rob Wood. As a prosecutor, he's a salaried worker. All right. And if you had a defense attorney appointed, they would be a salaried worker, like the judge. But you know who isn't salaried usually, or isn't salaried? The defense attorneys in this case, and the expert witnesses. So then you wonder and you watch and see how they're wasting, in my opinion, this is all my opinion. This whole entire video is my opinion. Okay. So if you're here watching it, it's my opinion. That's how time gets wasted. This is part and parcel of why people don't like attorneys. Even though Mark Means was the first person to bring this motion, John Pryor is the lead in a way. He's the one. He also did the same motion, changed the grammar and updated it, but they both are supporting this motion. They did their own motions, to get rid of Rob Wood. And so Mark Means sits there and lets John Pryor take 80% to 90% of the questioning and the work here. He lets John Pryor do all the work as he sits back with this antler head monstrosity in the background, almost making him look like he has antlers sometimes. It's the craziest thing, but I digress. So John Pryor calls his first witness to support this motion, which is Garrett Smith. And Garrett Smith is the fellow that represents Zulema Pastemes, who's the widow of Alex Cox, and he also represents Summer Shiflett, who is the sister of Lori Vallow. So John Pryor calls his first witness, who is Garrett Smith, and he questions him, and he elicits from him that Garrett Smith did not remember whether he turned on the phone. That's the audio recording. It was on a phone. If it was prior to entering the room, okay? And he also elicits from Garrett Smith that Garrett Smith did not provide Rob Wood with the audio tape, and that he provided the audio tape to Mark Means. Now go back to the original motion. It implies that there's a Brady violation. If you didn't give the audio tape to the prosecution, there isn't a Brady violation, at least on that issue. You following me? So right out of the gate, there's improper certifications or improper allegations, in my opinion. Then Garrett Smith says that he contacted the Arizona State Bar to assess, one, whether he could disclose the audio that he had made, in my opinion, surreptitiously. Two, the legality of the ethics of recording another attorney. That's important. And three, the substance of the call. So he shared this with the Arizona Bar, and allegedly the Arizona Bar thought it was acceptable for him to do what he did. So he shares the substance of the call. He goes over the legality and the ethics of recording another attorney surreptitiously. Because if you had agreed to it like you said you did, you wouldn't have to ask if it's okay. So right there it tells you that that was, again, an untruth put forth by someone. And whether he could disclose the audio to Mark Means. So then when Pryor asks why he disclosed the audio to Mark Means, Garrett Smith says, and he cites Arizona law, a 1977 law, and then he says there's exceptions to this law. So he's saying, oh, I'm going under the exception, that when recordings can be made to protect the client's exposure to perjury. Now, you know, this stuff is just going. Now stop and think. Pryor says, you know, did you think Summer was susceptible to perjury charges? And he says, yes, I think my client, Summer Shiflett, is susceptible to perjury charges. You know, a lot of the talking heads on this, I haven't heard them stop and just sink in the fact that Summer's likely perjured herself and they want to avoid that. Where did she perjure herself? Think about it. Where did she lie? Because going on television, guys, and giving interviews to Nate Eaton or whomever is not perjury, because she wasn't under oath. Where was she under oath and committed perjury? Just saying. He was worried about it. He said it himself. So I want to make a note of that too. Just as a sideline note. So Garrett, after contacting the state bar, he contacts Mark Means and says essentially, you ought to be aware of this. You ought to be aware that this is what Rob Wood is saying about you. Me. So it's very high school to me. And my question to you and to the thinking person here is, who is his client? Who is Garrett Smith's client? His client, Summer Shiflett. Not Lori Vallow, not Chad Daybell. Keep your mind your business and keep your hands on your own knitting. That's my opinion. This is a big case. You don't need to be doing that unless you have another motive. And that's kind of what I think. It smells of a setup to me, and I'm not saying you did. I just have no idea why you wouldn't. This isn't a knitting circle. They're not even, are they friends? I don't even think they even knew each other beforehand. Why would you do this? Because your duty of loyalty is to Summer Shiflett. It isn't to Lori Vallow. But he's going to try to craft it as to why it is. So let's keep going. Garrett references a call between Summer and Lori that really upsets Summer. So Lori's in jail and Summer's calling, and apparently there was some really upsetting call. So this upset Summer. I guess the fact that Lori could get the death penalty. Where has she been, guys? Do we realize that in toto there are like 6 deaths associated here, and we know of 2 for sure. So why would she be all hysterical about the death penalty and try to say it's the fault of Rob Wood? So that's what he's eliciting. He's eliciting the fact that Summer got really upset by the hearing about the death penalty. All right, and Rob Wood shouldn't essentially have been talking about that to this client. That's what they're getting at. Then Garrett brings up Zulema Pestenis and says she was only going to speak to the state and the police under use immunity. So he then essentially says that Zulema has got use immunity. And we'll go into that later. Okay, so just know, Zulema got a solid here. She went and got use immunity. It was finalized and it was signed. That's what he said. You're only going to give use immunity to someone that needs it, right? You know, that you want them to talk. And you're going to say, yeah, for this limited issue, we're not going to get you in any trouble for what you tell us for this issue. Use immunity. That's dumbing it down. I'll go ahead and put the definition up somewhere so you can enjoy it. But good. So he did good for Zulema. So then Pryor's trying to elicit who contacted who. Did Summer reach out? Did Zulema reach out? Or were the police and the prosecutor trying to reach out? And in theory, of course the police are trying to reach out because these people could be witnesses. Hell, they could be suspects, right? Of course the police are trying to reach out. But he's making it sound a certain way. So Garrett Smith essentially responds that he really doesn't remember who reaches out to who because, see, Zulema had an attorney before, or perhaps she reached out and he didn't know about it. So you're going to have a motion making it sound like the prosecutor asked you to come. The prosecutor asked you, questions, that he intimidated and he coerced, and that turns around you're the attorney. You're there with your client, right? You're protecting your client. You're there as a baffle. And that maybe your client even reached out. Now we're getting to the point where all these little points are getting knocked off that emotion. Well, that didn't happen. Well, that didn't happen. Well, that didn't happen. Or it didn't happen the way that it's stated. Then we get to hear the entire recording between Summer Shiflett, Rob Wood, and Garrett Smith. And allegedly, horrible thing, Rob Wood brought in his second. He had somebody else as a witness in there. Now, this wasn't said like, hey, this is my witness. He just had someone there with him. So this apparently freaks out Garrett Smith, and we'll get into that. We get to hear the tape, and I just want to talk a little tiny bit about the tape. We've talked about the tape before we heard it. So if you want to get deeper into that, check out my last video that talks about the transcript of the tape, which apparently wasn't even complete, which you gotta love this shenanigans, this circus. So about the conversation that we get to hear, we also find out that Chad asked Summer to bail out Lori. Yes, Chad asked Summer to bail out Lori. Can we also mention that none of the other talking heads talked about that? I thought that was fascinating. Why did he ask Summer to do that? Did he not have the cash? Was he trying to put her off on the Cox family? I don't know. It was mentioned. And Summer also agrees in the audio conversation that you could hear that Chad was manipulative, and Summer says on the audio that Lori knew enough to lie. And that's in the conversation where it's like Rob Wood saying, your sister truly believes that everything she does is in righteousness, and Summer's like, I know. And then Summer says that she believes that Lori's not fully aware of what she's done, but she knew enough to lie. So that's all on the audio tape. To me, it's a very give and take conversation. It's a lot of laughing, and at the end, Summer gives out gifts. Nothing says coercion and intimidation like handing out gifts at the end of a chat with somebody. So in my opinion, Garrett Smith contradicts himself while on the stand. He says one thing, then he'll turn around and say another, and then he even catches himself and updates his testimony. His affidavit stated that he would previously advise Mr. Wood that he would be recording, but then once he was on the stand, he said that he started recording when he felt it became adversarial. So which is it? I think he might have been inaccurate in his affidavit. Also, in my opinion, not one adversarial comment is said by Rob Wood to Summer Shiflett on that tape. He tells her they'll be seeking conspiracy to commit murder charges against Lori and Chad. And he says that they think that Chad is the mastermind behind this, and that sadly they have more against Lori, even though they think that Chad's the mastermind. And Summer proceeds to ask questions. I think if you were to look at the questions being asked in this small conversation between the two, Summer asks more questions of Rob Wood than Rob asks of Summer. He asks if she met Chad. That was a question. And she asks a bunch of questions about the state of Tylee's body. She also asks about the death penalty. So when it all comes down to it, when you go back to that original motion and you start crossing out things that were inaccurate and talking about how, in paraphrasing, that Rob Wood used the death penalty to scare the crap out of Summer, guess what? Summer was the one that asked Rob Wood about the death penalty. So all he did was answer her question. Is that not crazy, guys, about the level of spin and manipulation put on an audio and the inaccurate transcript that was put forth to support this motion, but then so far it's going wah, wah, wah whenever they're being questioned, because this is coming to light. And also, you can use your own ears to listen to the audio. Isn't that fascinating, guys? You can use your own brain to figure it out. You don't need a doctor to come on to tell you what you just heard. In my opinion, Garrett Smith was unprepared to be a witness here and to support his own affidavit. He did not even have a transcript of the audio that he recorded available. That's stunning to me. Simply stunning. It's unacceptable to me that you're an attorney doing a Zoom meeting and you don't have the ability to pull up the document. And if you don't, then you have it printed out and ready to peruse. Just saying. This is important. It's a Zoom meeting. You're being called as a witness. Be prepared. So then Pryor digs into the fact that Rob Wood was invoking, I think he said invoking, and it's invoking, which I thought, is he a wizard or something? But he's invoking LDS speak, which would have impact on Summer. He's like trying to say he's manipulating him. He's coercing him. You know, he's unprofessional. And his purpose is to gain favor with Summer Shiflett. In other words, start rapport with her. It's unprofessional to be nice to her. Didn't you know that, guys? Didn't you know that if a state's attorney meets with you before you go into the police and they just kind of give you a breakdown and answer your questions and they're nice to you, that's bad. That's rapport building, folks. That's rapport building. Did he say some off-color things about Chad Daybell? Yes. Did he say something that wasn't sweet about Mark Means? Yes. That's it. So then, prior in arguing how unprofessional this is to do LDS speak with Summer, he's kind of trying to act like it's all been said in front of a jury. And then finally, like, there's an objection because it's on in front of a jury. And everyone takes note of it. And it's like, let's move along. We're just reaching. Like, how long? He needs one of those arm reacher things, because that's how he's reaching. He's just reaching. It's crazy, in my opinion. Pryor's like, what about calling another person wimpy? Oh, so now we're not allowed to have an opinion about anything. It's not like he drug Lori Vallow through the dirt to her sister. He apparently said the word wimpy, referring to, I think, Chad Daybell, or I don't know. But they say worse about child molesters. That's what gets brought out. They say worse about child molesters. That's what, yeah, you're right. They do. They say things. People talk and they're not always sweethearts, but it doesn't make you manipulating or coercive, and especially if the person you're talking to is laughing. They're laughing at it. Basically, Garrett said, this was concerning to me to talk to someone before giving 6 hours of testimony. So he was concerned about the way this conversation went down before she went in there and gave 6 hours of testimony, and that he found it improper. And you know what I also take away from that? Something happened in that 6 hours of testimony with the police that we're not getting into. That is why. There's something that went on that's causing this circus. Okay, guys? That's my opinion. You can put the little crystal ball down there because I've been like that before, and you've been like, well, Thielen was right. Something, in my opinion, and in my speculation, happened that that hasn't come out yet. And they're dancing around it. That's my opinion, because something must have happened. She must have said something to the police. And since she wasn't a person of interest, maybe she didn't get use immunity. I don't know. But she was unhappy about something that came out in the police interview, in my opinion, and in my speculation. So Pryor's trying to drill down on different issues, and that's where Garrett stops and goes, like, from listening to the recording, the audio, I clearly started it before I got into the room. And to be candid, my intent was to record the interview. Garrett then says he felt that he needed a witness in case of a dispute. So, since Rob Wood had a deputy backup, then Garrett starts recording. So it isn't, like you said in the affidavit, that you said that everybody knew you were going to be recording. You started recording because you felt it would be adversarial, so you pushed that button because you saw he had another person there and you got worried for your client. And I just got to laugh because he says this, I want to supplement my previous testimony. So Garrett assumed that the conversation would be adversarial. Was it adversarial? Have you listened to the tape? Do you think that was adversarial? So there's cross-examination by Troy Evans, and he asks, where was the recorder, Mr. Smith? And, he says, it was my phone. And he's like, well, where was your phone? And he's like, I don't recall. You don't recall? You surreptitiously recorded the conversation and you don't recall? Come on. So Troy elicits from him what a lot of people have said about this whole entire thing, that you have Garrett Smith there representing his client, and he's an attorney. And he's like, we're all attorneys, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, did you object to anything Rob Wood said in that meeting? You're an attorney, right? Did you do your job? Did you object to any of these horrible, coercive, intimidating things? And you know what he said to that, guys? He said, no, my client was running it. I just want to laugh. Like, okay, your client gave you marching orders. Your client gave you marching orders and you just let someone allegedly just run right over her and upset her to death, and you sat there and let it happen because she gave you marching orders? He said, I still had concerns. After the fact, he had concerns, in my opinion. Once he gave it to Means, and Means got butthurt. That's my opinion. He shared it with Means. He didn't stay to his own knitting. Well, I got Zulima use immunity, and let's see what I can do for Summer. That's your own knitting, okay? He went and took his little surreptitiously recorded thing and took it off to Means, got all stirred up, and then this came out. So now he's got to deal with this. But he gets paid to deal with it, I guess, you know. So, you know, could you have objected, Troy Evans asked Garrett. There wasn't questioning. Precisely. There wasn't questioning. Can we just mark through this motion? Okay, that's negated. Oh, that's negated. Okay. So then Troy Evans asked this question that's kind of like a mic drop, okay? Because he says the tone in that audio, it's, y'all are joking, right? You know, there's laughter, right? When it was mentioned that Rob Wood said murder charges were coming down for Lori and Chad, you said good, right? Didn't you? He said good. And Garrett said, I don't remember. I don't dispute it. Okay, so you're the attorney for Summer, and you're sitting there being the baffle for her. And Rob Wood says, you know, we're bringing murder charges coming down against Lori. And he says, good. Isn't he traumatizing his client then, allegedly? And this is all just, it's a farce, in my opinion, but... So he asks, it's clear your client initiated the discussion about the death penalty. Mr. Wood references the transcript here. Pryor objects. He objects to what's seemingly right in front of the face being put into the record. So you're not supposed to listen. You're not supposed to read the transcript. You're not supposed to listen to the audio and compare it to this bootleg transcript. You're supposed to take what other people's remembrances of the event are. So Pryor objects, and I laugh so hard about that. And he objects at what is obviously on the GD tape. But of course he doesn't get anywhere with that. Garrett Smith doesn't have a transcript, and that's where we're just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. He can't look and see that Summer initiated the discussion about the death penalty, because that's then going to just mark through another thing. So Garrett admits that she definitely initiated the conversation. So how do you intimidate someone when they're the one that brings it up? So Mr. Wood told you and your client, you're not a person of interest. You don't have to talk to us, right? Garrett Smith, yes. How do you intimidate someone that's not a person of interest? Not anything to do, how do you coerce them? What are you coercing them to do? Twist your sister's arm while she's in jail and she's got an attorney? I mean, come on. Essentially, what we're coming down to is that Summer at some point allegedly got upset, but she got upset talking to her sister. Who's at fault? If you had causation and you said this happened and this happened and this happened, if Summer's upset, and she could be upset worrying about her sister getting the death penalty, who caused that? It's not the police or the prosecutor. It's the person who created the problem, the person who hurt the children. So Garrett then admits that there were several minutes of discussion before he turned on the recording. Now he's just contradicted what he said earlier in this own statement. This beginning, he knew he would record it, he said. But he hesitated on turning it on, his phone recording. He saw the deputy, and then he felt adversarial. If he felt it could get adversarial, and he recorded it because Wood had a witness. That's what he said. He did not tell the others he was recording. He said it in this hearing. So, of course, Pryor is going to ask about his own interests, which are eliciting about the disparaging remarks that Rob Wood allegedly made about Chad Daybell and Mark Means. You know, it's so horrible, the stuff he said about my client, essentially. Rob Wood said what he said about Chad Daybell. It wasn't flattering. Summer laughed at it. Rob Wood also said what he said about Mark Means, that essentially he wouldn't be death penalty qualified, you know, and that he didn't think he knew what he was doing in a criminal case that could be murder charges. That's what he said. Is it smeared with truth? Yes, in my opinion, it is. But by that same token, it's an opinion. Should he have said it? I mean, that would, to me, out of this whole thing is the only thing I'd be like, I probably shouldn't have said it, but it has no harm. There's no harm done. It didn't do anything to the case in chief. So Means, again, directs Garrett Smith about who reached out to who, and Garrett says, I don't believe I reached out to Wood's office on behalf of Zulema. I don't know if Miss Pastenes contacted them. You don't know what your client did and you didn't ask. Miss Pastenes keeps her head down. The only reason she talked to the state is because they offered her use immunity. Okay. Does it matter who reached out to whom? It doesn't. It doesn't. So, again, doesn't matter. Garrett Smith also makes mention that he didn't feel it necessary to soften the beach. And I thought, what does he mean by that? And I think he says he didn't feel that it was necessary to be nice by the state's attorney to his client. He didn't feel that was necessary in this conversation. No comment. They're acting as if they never ask difficult questions of family members. They keep talking about how Summer Shiflett's a family member, and the impression, unspoken, but the impression was, we may take another member of your family. And he talks about how she's lost a brother, and now Lori's locked up, and her sister had died, and then we may take another member of your family. I mean, they can reach. This is not what Rob Wood said. And Summer gave them gifts at the end. She was not seemingly intimidated and threatened by Rob Wood. And then they say, this is a weird case. It's like, yeah, you're damn right it's a weird case. And then you add this kind of shenanigans to it. So they call the next witness. And guys, this is one of the most boring witnesses I've ever listened to. And this is from someone who used to watch court TV like it was her job. I don't know how many trials I've watched and how many expert witnesses that drone on for hours and hours. And this is one of the up in the top 5 where you're just like, whoa. And I think part and parcel is because it's, in my opinion, doesn't apply to this hearing case, anything at all. But by that same token, they're letting this psychologist who knows everything about how to question someone and the techniques for questioning a witness and all these different studies and all these different models of questioning witnesses and stuff like that and interrogating people. This isn't making a murderer, guys. This was an introductory conversation with Summer Shiflett, who isn't a suspect in that issue. This is like a, hi, how do you meet you? Oh, okay, this is the theory we're going on, we might, are they going to charge death penalty? Yeah, it was like, bye, see you later. She goes off to the police. This wasn't some wild interrogation, but he's treating it like it's making a murder, and he's breaking down, this is what this person said, and then this person said this, and it made this person feel this sort of way. How do you know how it made somebody feel? Boy, we're just reaching. And they let him do it. He listens to the audio. He reads a first edition of the transcript, which allegedly isn't complete, and he crafts this 40-page report. And then he's questioned, almost defining each word in this 40-page report. And this goes on for so many hours. I just was like, I cannot deal with this. He's doing a forensic analysis of this document that you could just listen to it and get the tenor of what they're saying. You don't need, in my opinion, a psychologist to come on and explain what your ears can hear. But we're going to let him be the expert. He is an expert witness. I have no argument with that he's an expert in this field. He tries to explain how there's no active listening in this conversation. It's coercive questions. The stage is set for the purpose of the meeting. It's not open-ended questions. The questions weren't best practices. Wood asked like 2 questions of Summer Shiflett in this audio, by the way, and Summer asked the rest of the questions of Wood. So make of that what you will. I wonder if she asked him open-ended questions. So he nitpicks this transcript to death when asked if it's a flagrant display of like prosecutorial manipulation, that kind of thing. He says, I've never seen anything like this. Oh gosh. He attempts to get into everybody's mind with this, and he talks about how Summer's feeling torn, and then he essentially almost defines the word torn. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna lose it. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you doing? You know? And then he's just allowed to go. I think that was the frustrating thing. The attorneys didn't object, except for maybe once, and the judge didn't stop it, which the judge can also do that when he sees it's just wildly, the train is wildly off the track, and it didn't happen. It just went on and on. That's another reason I'm like, why is there so much groundwork being laid? Because something else, in my opinion, happened in the police station. It has to be, because why else would you allow this? It makes no sense. He talked about this whole conversation creating cognitive dissonance and pressure, and that there was improper influence of the witness, and that he didn't use best case practices. All right, so then there's cross-examination. Oh, finally, you know, after it went on and on and on, Evans asks, you know, how do you know what Wood said was not known to the public? Because if it's known to the public, he's not telling her anything nobody anyone else would know. He asked, like, essentially, what did you know about this case? I mean, did you know what the public knew? And he says he didn't know a dang thing about the case. What he didn't know was what Wood was telling Summer was already public knowledge anyway. So he admits it. He admits it. He didn't know that everybody knew about all this stuff already. So he also elicits from Mr. Davidson that the report is not accurate to the transcript. The report that he crafted, the 42-page report, is not accurate to the transcript as it was known, as it was put in as an exhibit. I know, guys, I know. So the witness says, what I have is the transcript provided by Mr. Means. So apparently there was more than one transcript going on. The doctor wasn't using the complete transcript for the report. He was using, I won't say cherry-picked on purpose, but he was using an incomplete transcript. He was making $275 an hour. At one point, Pryor even says something about deferring to the recording. And I thought, Lord have mercy, how, you know, can't we all just defer to the recording? Can't we all as humans just listen to what the recordings say? We don't need someone to explain to us what our ears are hearing, you know? And we don't need someone to then tell us what Summer was feeling. Bring Summer on as a witness. That's what you do. If Summer felt a certain way about it, Summer should come and give testimony that she felt a certain way about it. It's that simple. You don't need some psychologist who knows nothing, hasn't met with Summer, hasn't met with Wood, doesn't know any of the facts of the case, looks at some cut up transcript and then writes a 42-page report and now is coming in and testifying to it. My takeaway is, let's defer to the recording. Let the expert witness say, and in my expert opinion of 27 years or whatever it is, I feel that this was coercive and he should have asked more open-ended questions. And if there was anything that was, you know, just sum it up. So then he is asked if he has ever seen a prosecutor recused or disqualified on the base of an interview. And he said no. So the final witness of the day is Dr. Samuel Newton, who is a law professor at the University of Idaho, and he teaches things like ethics to the law students, and he knows about the ABA rules of ethics and talks about all kinds of different ethical issues. In my mind, he is similar in his approach to the psychologist that was called earlier, and he wants to talk about how the prosecutors can be unethical, but he keeps citing examples where you have, say, you're in trial and you have a state's attorney and you have a defense attorney, and the state's attorney is talking badly, talking crap about the defense attorney in front of a jury and talks about all these ethical violations and all these horrible things, and that has nothing to do with this case. Nothing. Summer isn't a person of interest. She wasn't questioned in front of a jury. It wasn't someone talking crap about her attorney. It's inapplicable. And so they can't even say that Summer Shiflett's testimony was affected by Rob Wood because she isn't giving testimony. So I cannot see though this guy seems like, again, he's an expert witness. He seems like he's qualified. I'm not saying he isn't qualified. I'm just saying it's a whole lot of nothing. It's a nothing burger yet again. There's nothing I can tell you that was brought out that was applicable to this case. And he can say what I feel that was unethical doesn't make it unethical, because you got a cite to say he did this, he said this, and it was affected. There was harm. There was causation. This happened. Prove it all. Prove the causation, who did it, that it happened, and that there was harm. And you kind of can't prove really any of it. So that's my opinion. All right, take it for what it's worth. So Friday, that's tomorrow at 1, they're going to be closing arguments on this. That might be better to watch than to go through to sit through these witness statements, these witness testimonies. It was excruciating. So the closing arguments should be wrapped up, I would think, and succinct. Who am I kidding, right? But anyway, I predict that the defense motion will fail. That's my prediction. I also predict that the judge will rule right after their closing arguments. I don't think he'll take it under advisement. And if he does take it under advisement, that makes me think that something else went down and they're just butt covering, because there's no way that this motion to disqualify should go forward. That's my opinion. I think it should be denied. I don't feel that Rob Wood did anything that affected Summer Shiflett or even affected the case in chief. Now, if Summer, I mean, there's little niblets of information that have come out due to them having this hearing. The fact that Summer and Lori had an upsetting conversation that obviously was overheard by the jailers. That Chad dissuaded Lori from coming forward and talking to the police. So there's all kinds of things that have come out that, that her own attorney felt like she could be up for perjury. I mean, that's kind of important, what she lied to the police about. So, I mean, there's little things that have come out from this that we wouldn't have known before. And I think it's just a nothing burger. And again, folks, if you're worried, I'm going to tell you, please do not worry about this case. Even if they find that Rob Wood, it's justified in taking him off the case, they're just going to put another state's attorney in there. And they might even get one that's not LDS, that's less sympathetic to Lori and Chad. I mean, you never know. I'm telling you, it's not like Rob Wood is the only state's attorney, on the planet that can do a good job and to be fair and unbiased. So I'm just telling you, please don't worry. This isn't going to change the time period of the case. Nothing is changing except for the person that's going to be doing presenting the case. So the case is still going to go on. They're still going to move for justice, even if he is kicked off as the head person. Doesn't mean he goes into some nether world. I mean, he'll still be working. So don't worry about it, guys. Everything's fine. It's fine. It's the circus. You get to see how the sausage is made, and sometimes you see it's rather kind of disgusting. So I hope that this got your mind off what's going on in the world for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and without further ado, have an excellent day. Take care. Bye.